Hi there, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. Joining me in studio today is Representative Mark Higley, who represents Orleans-Lamoille.
Right.
And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Pat. We had a nice radio show this morning.
Yes, we did. We're going to practice. Practice makes perfect, so asking the same questions. But anyway, could you tell our listeners, our viewers, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, so I'm originally from Guilford, the southern part of the state. After high school, I went into the service. I went into the U.S. Navy Seabees and went all over the world doing construction work. And when I came back, I got married, and I was actually a select board member in Brattleboro for a couple of years. And I conferred with my wife, and I said, hey, we either need to move to Alaska or northern Vermont. And she chose northern Vermont.
Good job.
Yeah. And I really, my mom's side, her family were Swedes that came over to work in the Proctor marble quarries. And then on my dad's side, they settled the Marlborough, Vermont area. So anyway, now we've kind of spanned the whole state of Vermont. And
that's great. Yeah. And you have a farm, do you not?
I do. I have some beef animals and draft horses. I actually just lost my last draft horse. I had 4 at one time. They age out. They were 30 years old. And,
yep.
And then I have some chickens, and so it's a little farm.
There's nothing like fresh eggs.
Oh, yeah.
You can tell the difference. If you do a blindfold test, you can tell.
I say they have meat in them.
That's yeah, the yolks are bigger mostly, aren't they?
Yeah, and orangey, and when you drop them in the pan, they stay right there.
Yeah. It's cool. Good for you. There's not so many people in agriculture up in the legislature anymore, is there?
No. And actually now my wife Kathy, who retired from Johnson State College.
Good for her.
She was the graduate goddess up there. She does a lot of the chores for me now, so that helps.
I was going to ask you why you're down here.
Yeah,
who's doing the work?
She helps. Yeah.
Helps. She does the work while you're down here, right? There you go. Anyway, Mark has sponsored a lot of bills. If you want to go on any legislator's website, just write in Representative whoever, Mark Higley, and it'll pop up and show you all the bills that they either co-sponsored, sponsored, signed on to. And there was a couple that just killed me. I thought it was fabulous. One was H354, which is an act relating to income tax deduction for home study programs. That made a lot of sense to me because the kids aren't in school.
Right, and I got to give credit to Chris Taylor from Milton. He's the lead sponsor, and I signed on because, again, I'm very supportive of homeschooling and your choice, which my wife and I took advantage of, and it was costly, but we at certain points thought it was best for our kids. Yep. But yeah, it's a tax reduction of up to $1,000 for things like materials, equipment, software, computers, that sort of stuff. So
good for you. I like that bill.
It never went anywhere, of course.
Well, because they're trying to get rid of independent schools. There's a little push again this year. Last year was bad. Yeah. They didn't give it up, but they didn't win. Yeah. So I agree with you. The kids, not one shoe fits all. Right. You've got to find the place that fits best for your student, for your child.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a neighbor child who now goes to Rice, and he comes home with the biggest smile on his face. He loves it. It's great.
Well, in our small school, we had every other year our girls would have been in the same class.
Oh.
And that didn't work out very well.
Ow. Hello.
And so finally in 7th and 8th grade, we had one of our daughters go to St. Paul's School.
Oh, nice.
And of course, we had to transport, and it was a challenge, but I think it helped to some degree to give them their own friends, so to speak. And anyway.
Yeah, it would be tough to be in a class with a sibling, I would think.
And then the other thing was our son, Kathy worked in Johnson, which was the opposite direction from us.
Right.
So instead of being an hour away up at North Country, we did the exchange program and had him go to Lamoille.
Oh,
and really, Lamoille was 5 minutes away from Kathy. So those are the sorts of things that I think is great for folks.
What we do for our kids, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Best thing. The other one, which we were on a radio show this morning on WDEV, and H782 is an act relating to the designation of Ken Squire Day. I love it. He is so deserving. What that man has done for this state
I know, again,
I mean, he's a legend.
I know, I got to give credit to Gina Galfetti, Representative
Right here in
Galfetti.
Barre.
From Barre. She put it out there, and a bunch of us signed on, and again, it's basically because he was born on April 10th, 1935.
Right.
So that's simple.
That's great. Well, I had the pleasure, of course, I'm working for WDEV, so I've seen him off and on while I've been there before he passed away, and still had that sense of humor. Woo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy, amazing. And the one that I sort of thinking I'm liking the most was H598, which was an act relating to holding local hearings on hospital budgets. I would wonder why we haven't done that.
I don't know.
They don't want to hear.
Again, Mike Marcotte was the key sponsor
Right.
on that one. But it's, again, whenever a Green Mountain Care Board takes testimony on a hospital, it would require them to have it at the hospital that is in the town.
Oh, there's a concept.
So, yeah.
I like that, because we don't hear much about what the Green Mountain Board does.
Right.
It's pretty low key, and plus they have so many people. The last time I looked, a couple of years ago, they had 24 people working for the Green Mountain Board.
Wow.
And because they review all the hospital bills and that sort of stuff, and not bills, but budgets, I'm sorry. And about 24 people.
Wow. And I told you this morning that they got flooded out down on State
Right,
Street.
right.
So they're up at National Life right now and looking for another spot.
Huh.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see. I really would like to start tuning in, find out. They should put it on Zoom. I wonder if it is on Zoom.
I'm not sure if it is or not.
Could be. For transparency, isn't that the new
Yeah,
word,
well,
the new word
yeah,
of the day?
S55 is
Yeah.
looking at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have other bills that are on your list, I'm sure, that you'd like to talk about? And
Well, I think, this morning we talked about, and you were a little surprised that there was 4 constitutional amendments being
please tell
proposed.
people this. I'm not doing well with this, Mark.
Well, and again, I got my cheat sheet because
Go right ahead.
my brain's going to explode after a day in Montpelier if I don't look at the cheat sheet. But so proposal 1, which was presented through Ruth Hardy, they have to start out in the Senate.
Yeah.
They have to go through 2 bienniums in the Senate and House approval.
This is the first one, isn't it?
This is the first one.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and then if they're passed in both the House and Senate in each biennium, then it goes to the voters. So the vote on these would be, it looks like in 2026, November of
okay.
2026.
So what does it do, or what is it asking for?
Well, the proposal 1 is it would allow the General Assembly to establish by law qualifications for a sheriff. That one didn't go anywhere.
I hope not, because you want to single out one occupant. What about the rest of it?
Well, right, that's
the treasurer, the secretary of state. I mean, name 'em.
auditor and you name it.
Somebody's
yeah.
not happy with the sheriff's office.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what that one was about. And
Aren't they elected? Sheriffs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So why?
Yeah, I know. Well, we want the power.
Yeah, there you go.
Or some
in
of
our,
us.
in our
Some of us
Constitution.
want the power.
Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm going to get.
And
I
just
can talk more on this show than I can on the radio. So.
well, and that's what I've known. Just as a side note, the most I've been down there 16 years, and I've noticed that the most with the bills that it's like a complete takeover or a complete rewrite. I mean, rather than having an issue and trying to square it away with some legislation, these bills are coming out with 61 pages, 103 pages, and it's and then you get the agencies in and they go, oh, time out, we don't have the people to do that, or we're
Right.
trying to do that, or let us do it this way, or put it into a study.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Let's study it. Then we can tell people back home, don't worry about it. We're studying it.
So the next one is proposal 2, which would be to repeal the section in our Constitution calling for criminals to be punished at hard labor. And the idea that the commission of crimes is effectively deterred by,
Sorry.
continued visible punishment of long duration is outmoded.
Is that for anybody, like people that kill people? I mean, anybody?
Well, yeah. I mean, the mantra in Montpelier, I mean, we just went through another bill trying to stiffen up regulations around some of these folks that are doing some pretty heinous things
Right.
with drugs and
Right.
firearms and stuff. And you know, some of the progressives got after the Judiciary Committee speaker who was presenting it, and it's basically like they're treating. They think that the ones that are doing the crimes are kind of the victim, and they should be
For babies.
yeah,
Right.
treated,
Right.
you know, for their issues rather than incarcerated.
That
And-
works.
And I think, I just think that it's the wrong direction for some issues, especially when, I mean, how many times do you look at an individual that's committed a crime and it's 10 failures to appear, you know, 5 misdemeanors, 2
right.
felonies. I mean, somebody like that, what you're doing isn't working,
Right.
folks.
There's a pattern.
Yeah,
right?
so.
And a partridge in a pear tree. There. So PR3.
PR3 is that citizens of the state have the right to collectively bargain.
What does that mean? First of all, we all have the right to bargain.
Right.
There's a process. You vote, you approve that you want a union to come in, and it's in. What?
Right, there's no difference
No?
in what would be in the Constitution other than it would be in the Constitution,
Right.
which, again, the Constitution is a pretty important document.
Right.
Can't stray from it, or if you do, it's should be hard.
Right.
And I think they always use the example of, oh, well, in another state, you know, they're pushing the right to work,
Right,
you know,
right.
blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so that one actually passed in the Senate and passed in the House. So we're on to next biennium. And of course, the union was standing in the back of the room taking pictures and
So PR3
cheering.
passed
Yes,
the Senate, and is it passed the House?
yeah.
Oh, Mark.
So,
Okay.
but we're on to the next biennium.
Right.
And
Very
then
nice.
PR4 is, and I haven't seen this one yet, and you know, we're only a week away
Right,
from
yeah,
adjournment.
right.
But, so the government must not deny equal treatment, and initially it had "and respect." So they must not deny equal treatment under the law on account of a person's race, ethnicity, sex, religion, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or national origin.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now that's covered other places. Maybe not all of the words that are referenced there, but they could add that if they wanted to.
Well, the thing is, that was some of the comments as far as, you know, who are we leaving out with this? Well, you know, I mean, why, you know, we could be leaving, we're definitely leaving some groups out.
Right.
And anyway, it's another, I don't know, another attempt by the majority, if you ask me, to push their agenda. You know?
I don't think they understand the significance of this document.
Right.
I mean, it's as I was upset with Article 22 last year. Did we pass, or the year before?
It was the year before,
Year
yeah,
before,
20.
where it talked about abortions and
Yep.
the women's right, but they were not clear. They never used the word abortion in the language. Never used the word woman. They called it persons, whatever the heck that means.
Right.
With regard to abortion, and they never talked about 9 months. That this language, the way they wiggle roomed it, and they sold it under a woman's right, and I am pro-abortion up to a certain point, but 9 months, no, and I don't think people understood what they voted for because they didn't say it. The language, you could read that 100 times and wouldn't understand that it was an abortion allowed up to 9 months.
Right, I think it's something like an individual's right to reproductive autonomy.
Yeah, right.
And again, you know, my concern there is I've always supported bills, let's say, that would require parental notification of underage
Right.
individuals that were looking to have an
And
abortion.
we don't even talk about that with
Right,
those
well,
bills.
and with this constitutional amendment, all those sorts of things would right off the
Right.
bat be unconstitutional, so.
Well, that would have been a no vote for me.
Yeah.
There you go. So, so that's the 4.
Yep,
And one of them, then the one you just read, has already passed and is on its way to next biennium.
that's
Right.
the one about being able to
raised-
unionize.
Okay, union, so that's 3. I'm going to write
Yeah,
about this.
that's 3.
Okay, excellent. So, but are there any other bills that you have signed on to that you'd like to talk about? Otherwise, we can
Yeah, actually one that's being talked about quite a bit in the group that came down to Montpelier last week. There
Yeah.
was everybody from James Ellers
Oh,
to
you
John
were telling-
Rogers.
yeah.
And Allison Despency. I don't know some of the other names, but they were, a select board member, just talking about the taxes, the unaffordability here in Vermont and, everything that they're doing. But
Thank goodness.
one of the bills that I put in, I was on Energy and Technology when we passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, and myself and Representative Sherman from Stowe voted no.
Right.
And so I've noticed since then that so much of what's going on in Vermont with, they're actually benchmarks now, they aren't goals, which is a concern. There's already the comprehensive energy plan that we've had in the state forever. You probably remember that terminology. So now there's these benchmarks, and if we don't meet these benchmarks for carbon reductions, we're going to be sued.
That is-
Anybody can sue, that's the wording, and we'll pay for their attorney's fees and any reasonable costs if they win.
That is what they call a Pandora's box. How do you allow that? And where does it stop?
Right.
You can't turn around and sue the state.
Right.
I mean, there's got to be some kind of protection.
No,
No.
and the thing is, because of that, I mean, the Climate Council is an appointed group of folks. It's
Right.
not, it's not elected. And they've come up initially with the TCI, Transportation Climate
Right,
Initiative,
right.
would have been a gas tax and diesel tax on vehicles. There's actually, it's back in the transportation bill where they're going to do a study on it again. Because they didn't follow through because enough other states didn't go along. They
Right.
needed that sort of cooperation, I guess.
Right.
The next one that, remember initially it was the, called the Clean Heat Standard, Clean Heat, and the governor vetoed it, and we
Right.
upheld his veto by one vote. Well, then
Right.
the next year they introduced it, the next biennium, I should say. They introduced it again as the Affordable Heat Act.
Right.
And it passed.
Yep.
So that's due to kick in here once they get the credit schemes figured out, and could be as much as 70 cents to Ethan
They're
Allen.
going to price us out. I'm retired, you know that. I mean, there's just so much money.
Yeah.
And I'm getting close to the enough's enough.
Yep,
And they don't care. They, honest to God, don't seem to care.
I know. And then of course there's the following California's clean car standards.
Right.
Where no new internal combustion engines will be sold in the state of Vermont by, matter of fact, it starts in 2026.
Really, that's
Yeah.
just around the corner.
And so there has to be a certain percentage of EVs on
Right.
lots. And it was funny because there was actually a Burlington rep who put in a companion bill. I have another bill, it's H73, which would repeal that, following California's clean car. She's doing it for a little different reason. She's doing it because of the affordability issue. That's also it.
Right.
But she went in and gave testimony and talked about that starting early in 2026. There's got to be so many on the lots.
Right.
And the chair of the committee looked over at Ledge Council and said, "Is that true?" And Ledge Council said, "Yes, in 2026, there's got to be a start of so many vehicles." And he goes, "Well, that doesn't mean anybody has to buy them, does it?"
Hello.
Oi. I mean.
Yes, it does. Because your car won't be available when you go to sell it. Right?
Eventually, but
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't make any sense to say that.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of bills that, like I say, people are talking about them because they understand that the Global Warming Solutions Act is really what's triggering all these bills that are going to, in my opinion, really hurt Vermonters.
I'm right with you.
Yeah.
I'd be sitting right next to you going, no. No, pay attention. I don't understand. They've heard it from everybody. There was a bill last year that was, and I think it's one of the bills you talked about, they got more people calling in saying vote no than they did on any other, than even on the abortion issue.
Yeah, that was S5.
S5. Oh. And everybody called in and said, please, Mr. Representative Higley, vote no, vote no. No,
Yeah,
they just passed it.
yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get through to them. I will give John Rogers a shout out though. He's working hard to make some noise and get them to pay attention.
Yeah, well, and yeah, it's, I hope, especially this year with the 15% possible increase in residential property taxes, and then the non-residential is as much as 18.5%.
That's great.
That's huge, and
Yeah.
you know, the governor's trying to do something about it. I worry that we try to fix it this year. It's not going to go away.
It's not a fix.
Yeah.
You have to stop, and here's a word, stop spending. It's just a thought. It's just like at your own home.
Yeah.
You know, there are times you get to a point where you have to stop.
And there was provisions in the yield bill, it's called the yield bill.
Yeah.
That gave towns a threshold, school boards, a
Right.
threshold in their spending, and anything above that threshold, it would be the responsibility of the town to pick up. So that has a little bit more nexus to what you vote for and what you spend,
Right.
where now it doesn't. I mean,
Well, people don't understand it.
right.
I had Tom Pelham, you know Tom.
Yep.
He came on the show a couple of years ago, and we did a show of what questions to ask the Board of Ed when you go to town meeting. People loved it because they don't, I mean, it's so confusing. You don't even know what questions to ask. I know. And he got on the video and told them, here's the 10 questions you should ask, blah, blah, blah. And people answered them.
Yeah.
And I thought, great show, because who knows? I don't understand half of it anyway.
Yeah, there's only one person in the state that I know of that really actually knows the ins and outs of education finance, you know.
Oh, who's that? Anybody?
Well, he left. He
Oh.
left. He's no longer there.
Oh, Bill? Is it? Yeah. No, it's really, and it's hard to explain because you can save and spend as little as possible in your town and your taxes still go up because it's judged on the whole state, and people don't get that. Well, they're trying to kill themselves, you know, in your town. The town next to you is going, oh, who cares?
Well, another example of that is, I don't know if you remember, but they had, I think it was $32 million for PCB testing for schools,
Oh, for
right?
the schools, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So these schools started testing and stuff, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, Burlington needed 16 million of it.
Whoa.
And they got it. And yeah, and then of course this year, you know, the program is pretty much dead.
Right.
And it was funny because I was talking with a VT Digger reporter
Yeah.
who was reporting on the education process this year, and he talked about the PCB testing and the money, and I said, why don't you mention that Burlington got that? And he looks at my name tag and he says, oh, a rep from Northeast Kingdom. I can see why you'd be concerned. And so the next
Well, everybody
story,
should be concerned.
yeah, I mean, North Country High School's going through it. I think it's like $60,000 to $80,000 a pop.
Wow.
For each test. They put in these charcoal filters, and some of the tests actually even came back higher levels of PCB than, you know, prior to putting in the charcoal filters.
Wonderful.
So it's like, where is it coming from?
And our
What's
kids are
going
in
on?
these schools?
I'm sorry?
Our kids are in these schools where the levels are too high?
Wow, yeah, but Vermont uses a Vermont standard, not the federal standard.
Oh, which is
and
higher
it's
than-
a lot higher, yeah.
Yeah, higher. Okay, well, let's hope they're okay. All right, so if you have any others, if not, I'd like to talk about your committee and talk about GovOps,
Yeah,
which was always where I like to serve. And Cola Hudson came from.
that's right.
We did a show or two on Representative Hudson,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
A
No,
legend.
just one other thing in advance I wanted to touch base on. I fought for years the general contractors registration.
Oh, yes, please
through
tell me
the
about
Office
that.
of
I did
Professional
too.
Regulation.
Yep.
And I guess they were asked, of course, it's been a year, a little over a year now. I think it was April of last year it started up. They have a little over 900 folks that have signed up. And the Associated General Contractors, I think, said there's as many as 12,000.
Wow.
So what's going on, you know, and of course, people
Right.
don't know about it really.
Yep.
I filled it out, I'm a contractor as well, and I was a little concerned because I didn't even realize, even after all the debate, I understood you had to be current with child support payments and taxes and all
right.
that, but I didn't realize there's a boilerplate question for all professions in regards to licensure. And there's questions like, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Have you ever been on a registry of any kind? Do you feel you have the
Wow.
cognitive ability to carry out your you know, and, you know, I know a lot of people that might get to that point and go, you know, I'm sorry,
Right,
I'm not continuing.
And yet, they turn around and put in a bill to the Constitution that says, hey, run free.
And I finally got through, and the other thing that, and I talked to the Secretary of State's office about this, I just did it this last period before the prices went up again, but April 1st. And I got a note after I'd filled out everything. It says, "Dear Mr. Higley, OPR has received your license application, but note, big note at the bottom, you are not allowed to practice your profession until you receive your license." And that's not the case. I mean, you don't even have to register unless you have a job that's over $10,000.
Oh, right.
Right?
That's
You know, there's qualifications
Yes,
for it. And so it was kind of concerning to me. And then you might have heard a report on TV too. I saw it on Channel 3, where they said if you don't sign up, you could incur thousands of dollars in fines.
And
well, that's not necessarily the case either.
Well,
I mean,
love it.
you have to be, you know, you have to have an issue with somebody you work for where they would, you know, turn you in,
Right.
go through a whole process. And then if you were practicing without that registration, then there could be some fines.
Well,
but
maybe the pendulum will swing back over time because, I mean, that's some of those questions are just, give people a break for heaven's sake.
it's boilerplate, as well as the answer to that you can't work until you get your license. First
Right.
of all, it's not a license.
Yeah.
It's a registration.
Registration.
And they said, oh, well, maybe we can change that, but they aren't going to change it. You know, I mean, it's.
Have you expressed your opinion to
Oh,
the folks?
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, to the
Yeah.
folks at me.
I went
That's
right
good.
over there and showed the
Right.
original chair of the committee that was pushing it for years, and I said, you know, here's some of the stuff I'm dealing
Right.
with. And, you know, think about it too. Everything has to be done now online. So, I mean, I've had contractors call me up that are small-time contractors, and they
don't
go,
know.
I don't have the internet. I
Right.
have to go to my son's house. And
Right.
so it's no paperwork
Yeah,
anymore.
they think everybody can do it, but there are some things I give up and I have to go see my sister to ask her to do it. That's interesting. So I don't know whether we should talk about ethics now, if we're talking about your committee, but there are some bills that the ethics bill was in your committee a lot this year. And your chair, I think, was the original sponsor. It was a committee bill, correct?
Yeah, it was a committee bill, and it hit on both state ethics as well as, so that means for folks that are running for office.
Right.
But then they had a municipal ethics piece, and that's where I had some issues with it because I had a lot of my towns getting in touch with me saying, geez, Mark, this is, you know, we don't really have the capabilities to have a liaison that's
Right.
going to be linked with the commissioner and so on. So, you know, in the end, they combined them. And I didn't support it. But,
Yeah.
you know,
And I understood. Ted Brady, I love Ted Brady, and he's the executive director for the League of Cities and Towns. And he's always been such a good guy. And he worked for in our congressional delegation, and they couldn't find a better guy, and he was.
Yeah, he didn't like it.
He didn't like this at all.
Whoa.
And, you know, I mean, Colchester was in. I think they brought everybody that worked in Colchester into the committee. Were they at your committee? Because
Yes.
that was, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
They were ripping.
They said, you know, we've had this in place for years. We're doing a good job. Don't do this.
And they said, and I had the numbers memorized at one point, but they said something like they had 36 policies, and half of them or 20 of them had had ethics in the policies. So they had all these policies, and not only did they have a standalone ethics policy, but ethics was written into half, if not more, of their policies. So they had it covered. Everybody had to be trained, and they were not happy.
That's part of what I've been saying, Pat, about what I see happening where, you know, we know better, you know, and I've been on the other side of it as a lister and a select board member. And a lot of times when something comes down from the state, I say, well, where the heck did they come up with that?
Right, well.
And I just, the mantra over there just seems to be, we know best, and we're going to push it forward, and you guys just suck it up and do what you need to do. And
I mean, just in fairness, I mean, because I've been on there, Campaign for Vermont is supportive of this bill and the municipal bill. And my position was people really do need, and I know this from my own town, people do need a place to go that's confidential, which would be the Ethics Commission, and that you can ask, is this a conflict? And they'll tell you yes or no, but they won't do anything with your name.
Right.
And that to me, because I think in the small towns, sometimes, you know, how are you going to go up to your select board and say, hey, Mark,
I know.
I think you've got a conflict.
It is tough. Like I said, though, for a lot of small towns, you've got such limited folks that are willing to
Right.
step up these days.
Well, that's
and
true.
If you push them too much with certain requirements,
Right.
you know, like I told you, if you say that you don't have a conflict and somebody says you do, you have to fill out all this paperwork as to the
Right.
reason that you do and
Right.
file it, and
Well,
it's
let's see, it's always can be amended. I do think it's good to have a statewide code of it. We're the only state that didn't. Not that that should matter one way or the other, but we are the only state that didn't have a statewide code of it. And this is so basic. I mean, I don't know what the official code of ethics would be in other states, but I think we all could write them. They're really basic. It's not too tricky, you know, and hopefully I don't think the liaison person's going to be that busy. I don't know
Yeah,
about
I
your
hope
town,
not,
but
yeah.
if you get one a year, it's a whole lot. There are some people I know. I mentioned Jim Condos when he was in the legislature. He always stood up because he was in with oil and fuel deals in his private life and in his company, and he stood up and he said, "I've got a conflict." And then the Senate would vote. He'd explain why on the floor, and they'd vote yes or no, and sometimes they'd let him vote, and sometimes they wouldn't. So, but he always did that, and I was always, and Tom Lozon does that in Barry City. He'll get up from his seat, if this is mayor, and he'd get up and walk around and sit down with the people and say, I'm out. Yeah, which is how it should be.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it works,
Yeah.
you know. But Colchester, whoa, and there was a guy up Northeast Kingdom. He was really angry.
Trying to think.
Oh.
Bloomfield, I think.
What's it? Oh, he was not a happy
was not
camper.
happy.
Whoa. I was watching from home and I'm making noises, and Bruce comes in and goes, "What?" I said, "Well, this guy, not a happy camper." So I know, but I do know your chair was on the radio with me and very supportive of the bill. So it's hard when the chair is the is the sponsor of the bill.
Yeah.
You know.
We try to tweak it. I mean, regardless of whether I vote no or not, I try to do the best to take out some sections that are pretty concerning.
Right. Well, I know, and you read them. You and Ann Donahue, who is our representative here. I think Ann reads every single bill.
She's great.
And she can stand up, and people will listen to her. They may not agree with her. She stood up, and we had this discussion before. She put in an amendment. They were looking at the budget from Apropes. It must have been Apropes, correct?
Yeah.
And she put in an amendment to make them reflect in the budget bill all of the other monies that have been appropriated in other bills, which you said, what did you say it added? Not so much, but.
No, well, it was $100 million, over $100 million.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And but they said no, they voted it down.
Right. It was just, transparency.
Yeah,
And
because of that and the budget adjustment, you really don't know at any time during the year how much was actually approved.
Right.
The budget is just 1/3 of that three-legged stool.
Yeah.
And they make a big deal, oh, it's only, X million more than last year. Well, not really.
Right.
If you really look at the budget adjustment, and I will tell you this, and I don't know that it's changed any. When you were in state government and you ran into some money problems and oh, don't worry about it, we'll fix it in budget adjustment. Oh, okay.
All right.
And so off you go, because we'd fix it in budget adjustment.
Well, I think I told you too that the Senate took out a lot of those fees and
Explain
stuff.
this, because I honestly didn't
and
understand
so now it's
it.
in a conference committee, so they got to work it out. Okay, Yeah, because they initially the appropriations bill was not much over the governor's recommend.
Right.
8.6 billion or whatever plus, but that the other added on to it just was not right in the way it was done.
So you said, technically, if a bill said you can have a position, like the CTE bill had a position that went to the Department of Ed to oversee the community, the technical ed places, facilities, but it said something about say $70,000 a year if available, or what's
Right.
the phrase?
Well, what happened was both Appropriations Committee on a lot of these bills like that
Yep.
pulled the money out. The bill still went through, but there's no money in it for that position. And what the wording was in there was something to the effect, this isn't exactly it, but if available, funds can be found.
But you could find it in your own budget, can't you? But that'd hurt to find.
Well, yeah, it would
maybe you
definitely
could.
hurt, because I know, like even for an example, the new animal welfare bill that they want the Department of Public Safety to take on.
Right.
They really, they don't, well, I think I said there's 52 to 54 vacancies in the.
Yeah, they can't find anybody.
In the department, so.
Nobody's applying, or the ones that do apply, they don't make it through the, have you ever had a felony for drug abuse or something?
Oh, right.
And, as a kid in high school, that's it just get you gone,
Yeah.
because you can't have a record of any drug abuse, which makes sense, actually, but anyway. So what else is happening in your committee? I know we can talk about GAC. That's one of my favorite ones, which is H702.
Yeah, that was legislative operations and government accountability. I didn't support that, again, just because of the makeup. I think if they could somehow make it more objective, I'd feel more comfortable with it. But
Well, have people that have a background in streamlining and efficiency. Just picking somebody from the legislature doesn't mean they've got that authority.
Right.
You need skill to do that.
yeah,
And when I was on the original GAC, way back when, with Donna Sweeney and Jeanette White,
okay.
but we had no support from anybody. I mean, Zippo support. So it didn't last very long. We tried, but you need people on the committee that gets what being efficient means and how to change systems. And then from there, my sister's job as the
Results-based accountability.
exactly. Remember that RBA?
Yep.
There you go. Good job. Yeah, that was hot back then. That was everybody had something they were hawking, but it's not too hard to find efficiencies in state government. It's pretty easy to do if you actually talk to the employees. This is a concept,
Right.
but ask them how they could do their job better. They'd raise their hand, and that's why in motor vehicles when we did that, it all came. I presented 2 ideas to the committee, and the rest all came from employees.
Well, wasn't there a program put in place years back where if an employee came up with an idea that
Right.
was
Yeah, but the union
used,
started that. Yep.
yeah,
They
they
got money.
money bonus. Yeah,
Well, you'd be surprised what they can come up with if they're given the authority to do it.
sure.
Ask them.
Yep.
They'll tell you. But there you go. That's another whole show. So one more. This one I love. H667, an act relating to the creation of the Vermont Ireland Trade Commission.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that
Is that-
Connor Casey and the group kind of brought that forward, and it sounds like they had made a trip to Ireland this past year.
On their own dime, I
On their
asked
own
that
dime.
question.
It was asked on the floor.
Yeah.
Yep. But and we had testimony from a senator from Ireland.
That's cool.
And it's just there's going to be a 10-member trade commission set up.
Great.
To advance bilateral trade and investment, promote business and academic exchange, and
Cool.
other issues determined by the commission.
Fun.
Yeah.
I love it. I
So
love
it's-
it.
yeah, it is kind of a fun thing for a change,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. And it's something pleasant
Yeah.
and fun to talk about. Usually it's about, well, at least they got rid of the 22.5% property tax. Got it down to what, 15?
15.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I think that they heard. People screamed loud
Well,
and clear.
There's still a lot of budgets out there that still
Yeah,
got to come in,
yeah.
I think, yeah.
Well, did you hear this latest one? That if there is a place in the budget, if you can't pass a budget, the legislation, the statute says it falls back to a certain percentage.
87%.
Well, forget that. Now they want to allow the school board, with no cap, it could even be bigger, to make the final decision. That is wrong.
Well, they backed off from that.
Oh, did they? Oh,
Yeah,
thank goodness.
Just today, or I heard rumors that
Oh,
they aren't
that's
considering that
good.
anymore.
I didn't like that. If they don't like the 87%, they could increase it if they want.
Yeah, it was
But there
af-
should be a cap.
It was after 3 votes. If they didn't get it passed, then
This-
they were going to allow the school board to.
Well, I bet a lot of people would be volunteering to be on the school board if they have that kind of power. I might even think about it myself. But you have to have a cap.
Right.
You can't have them come back with more.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And as a voter, you wouldn't have any repercussions except not to vote for these people
Terrible,
anymore.
terrible policy.
Yes. Don't even tell me
Well,
who thought that one up.
Well, no, but the thing is, yeah, that's the train of thought with a lot of folks in Montpelier now, and I just, it's so far removed from what I grew up
Right.
with too, as far as being responsible.
Yeah.
And it's a concerning. It
Well,
should be.
and sadly, not very many people show up at school board meetings at all,
Right.
anywhere,
Oh,
ever.
yeah. No.
And so to give these people that kind of authority and power while you're not there, I don't think it's a good idea. I'm very glad they decided to
Yeah.
chuck it because,
They're backing off.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, good. Somebody got to them. So tell me, you also, amongst everything else you're doing here, you are part of LCAR.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that because people don't talk about LCAR too much. And it's actually what you do on LCAR, which is the Legislative Committee for Administrative Rules.
Yep.
The departments like DMV or Human Services or whatever have the authority to write rules, which after they get through LCAR actually have the full force and effect of legislature. So you're writing legislation in that committee. It's a powerful committee.
Not really. We're not. We don't have that kind of authority. What we do is, so generally when a bill gets passed, sometimes they allow the agencies to promulgate rules,
Right,
right?
right.
And so what we do is we look at the rules and determine whether or not they meet legislative intent.
Right.
And if we feel that they didn't meet legislative intent, the only thing we can do is, I mean, even if we said, even if we didn't approve it, right? The agency could still go forward with the rules.
Oh, now is that seriously? I thought, and obviously I'm wrong, but I thought that once you said yes, that's like it was in the bill. That
No, because
No.
again, that's what our job is, to look at it. And what happens then, let's say that, well, I'll give you the example that happened was in regards to trapping and hunting of coyotes with hounds
Right.
last fall. We took 2 months' worth of testimony on it. I thought the Department of Fish and the board, Fish and Wildlife Board, did a good job.
Right.
They even went overboard on regulations.
because that was a hot issue.
Yeah, my colleagues, other than, again, it's an 8-member committee. There's only 2 of us that are Republicans, David Weeks, Senator Weeks, and myself. And in the end, the final vote was 5-1. We weren't all there. I was the one no vote, but the rest of the LCAR board didn't believe that it met legislative intent. And they had asked the board to reconsider 4 issues a couple of times. And the board at the end said, we're not, we've
Right.
considered it, we're
Right.
done. And so they implemented the rule. Well, you may remember there was a group that sued them.
Yes, that's right.
And the judge came back, because there was an injunction right off the bat, to not let them have the coyote hunting season
Right.
until the lawsuit was settled.
Right.
And the judge actually came back and said, no,
go.
it meets legislative intent, so I'm letting that go forward.
Huh.
But then what happened, in my opinion, is other members on LCAR, one is the chair of one of the Senate committees, drafted a bill
Yep.
that would change the makeup of the Fish and Wildlife Board,
Right.
make them advisory
That
only.
was in the paper once or twice.
Yep.
Yep.
Add two new members, so supposedly non-consumptive members. They don't like to use that word.
Yeah.
But non-consumptive members, picked out by the Speaker of the House, and I don't know if it was a committee on committees, each one probably got one. But anyway, and then ban coyote hunting with hounds.
Wonderful.
And so we, again, that committee has taken a bunch of testimony, but I kind of heard rumor that it's going to stay on the wall. which means
well, it's
not
pretty
going to make it all the way
contentious.
through the process.
Right. And have they done, I mean, the board's done a good job.
I think the board's done
I
an
mean,
excellent job.
we've not heard much over the years about them.
They have the most, the strictest guidelines, best management practice in trapping.
Right.
And they came in and explained the new traps you have to have, swivels you have to have on them, you know, all these things that you have to do. And even with coyote hunting with hounds, the dogs have to be registered, you have to be licensed, there's only so many dogs, they have to have radio collars on them, which they mostly
Right,
did
to track
anyway.
them, right.
You have to keep a log, you have to go only on land that you have permission to go on.
Right.
It's huge.
Right, right.
But one of the things that Elkhart wanted, which was a de facto ban, was they wanted the meaning of control of your dogs to mean in sight or voice command at all times.
No.
And
Not if they're
think about that.
not if
I
they're
mean,
chasing something.
Wow.
They're
So-
gone.
So how does that go? I mean, now the debate, if you ask me, is
Right.
this bill's out there. You can't tell me that people that support this now aren't going to go after bear hunting, rabbit hunting,
Right,
partridge
right,
hunting,
right.
you know, you name it. Because,
Slippery slope, isn't that what they call that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Well,
just,
I've done a shows on trapping, and I don't understand. This is very naive of me, and I'll appreciate that. Why can't they, after all these years, build a better mousetrap? Why? I mean, those things are. I can see why some people are adamantly opposed to them, while others are not. I get both sides of the argument, but I don't understand why all these years somebody hasn't sat down and designed a better mousetrap to catch these
well,
animals.
the design of these new traps that you have
Are
to
they?
buy, yep, well, actually there was there was a potential for an appropriations, and I don't know how that came out, to purchase these new traps, but there's a couple of different kinds. There's a kind that the leg hold traps anyway don't
Right,
close all the
right.
way, or they have a rubber membrane on the
Oh.
outside, yeah.
So the hunter's going to have to check more often, right?
And
Good.
then there's swivels on them, because a lot of times when they got their foot in it, if you
Right.
didn't have the swivels on the change, they could hurt themselves more. And that way too, if you do get a domestic dog
Right.
or something in the trap that you're not trapping,
Right.
you can let it go and it doesn't hurt it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a name for these? Would you know? I'm going to look this up.
No, they look like the regular leg hold traps, but
I have to look
the
that
game
up.
the game warden came in and did an actual presentation and had a bunch of them.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I'm like, after all these years, it's the same argument every year. Fix it.
Yeah.
If you want to continue this, fix it.
The conibear traps, though, are still,
yeah,
you know,
they're-
they're a killer trap.
Yeah, I
right
tried to
off.
open those up, forget it. Yeah, that's pretty sad. Well, that's nice to hear they're at least making some kind of headway. That's great. And I think on Elkhart, this is one of my favorite subjects, the wake boats.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you and I disagreed
Yes,
on that
I
one.
know we do, but think about it. You cannot enforce that. Unless you've got buoys up and you don't want a lake full of buoys, how do you know what's 200 feet? How do you know what's 500 feet? And I disagree with the gentleman that told you they only go 15 miles an hour, because there's no wakes at 15 miles an hour.
Well, no, that's...
Is it wakes enough to actually ski?
Yeah, matter of fact, they talk about even more about 9 miles an hour, you get a better
Really?
wake. Yeah.
Is
I
there
mean,
is there
10 miles.
legislation to say 15 miles an hour?
No,
No.
no.
I'll have to send you some videos that
I'm-
way you've
I'm
seen them.
I'm sure. But, you know, my point there was, and again, you know, I was out in Washington State years back, and I started seeing all these signs that said access for all. And I asked my buddy, I said,
Yeah,
what's
what is
that all
that?
about,
Right,
you know? And he says, well, you know, there's groups out there that, like, they used to take their families with four-wheels and dirt bikes and go up into the hills and
Right,
camp out.
right.
And they wanted to, you know, stop
right,
that.
right.
And so, and it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I think, you know, as long as you, and again, the wake boat rules are the strictest in the country.
That is true. That I do know. I
Minnesota
know.
doesn't even have.
But pay
that.
attention, bigger and better is coming. I had a gentleman on my radio show, Eric Chittenden, who told me that they are designing and building bigger, better. So we'll wait. And now I can see in Missisquoi, Lake Champlain, something fairly large, and yet Missisquoi is having trouble on both the Canadian and the Newport side. I've heard from people in Newport that it's a problem there, but, well, we'll agree to disagree. I still
right.
like you a lot, Mark.
Yeah. All right.
And then, we won't let the wake boat thing. The chances of my being in a wake boat and skiing are this much. But anyway, anything else in Elkhart? I was trying to think of what else we...
Well, the one other thing that I really had an issue with, and thank goodness we dealt with it a little bit in Elkhart, was under the housing bill last year, there was a piece in there, these residential building energy standards, they have to
Yep,
be
right.
updated every 3 years.
Right.
And they were supposed to go into effect last fall. And when you talk about affordable housing,
Right.
some of these home building outfits came in and testified that said, with these new regulations, it would increase the cost of an average 1,800 square foot home to the tune of $28,000.
Good grief.
Yeah, and I mean, it was things that were...
So much for affordability.
Yeah, so much for affordability.
Right.
And so I put in an amendment to the housing bill, S-100 last year, and they didn't accept it. It would have postponed it for 2 years. But in Elkhart, because those rules had to come through Elkhart,
Right, you got it
we
there?
had this,
Excellent.
the same folks came in, and actually, and again, I'll go back to Pat, that we didn't say, you're gonna postpone action on it. What we said was, we asked the Public Service Department,
Right.
will you postpone action until July? And they said yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, you know, that's, like I say, we don't have the authority to say,
Right.
postpone action until
Right.
July. You know, but what we have is the ability to ask them to, and then, of course, we have the ability to go back to the legislature and say, well, there is a bill too now. I don't know if it's seriously being considered, but to give the Public Service Department the ability to implement new rules whenever they want. In other
Whoa,
words,
just do it.
yeah, not in 3 years. They'd still probably have to go through the rules process,
Right.
but they could do it every year
That's
if they
great.
wanted to. But
Well, maybe, that's, who knows?
yeah,
That's a lot of work.
well, it's just, I mean, granted, you know, some of it is good, but and then of course, now that they have contractors registered, there's also talk about statewide building code and having these contractors have to be certified
Oh,
in
wow.
residential
They don't
building
stop,
energy.
do they?
Yeah.
These are mom and pop people, you know, one person.
Right.
I love it. We don't stop, do we? I'm just thinking of Act 250, and there was a bill floating around that would actually make minor changes to Act 250. Has anything come across that would,
Well, and
therein lies the crux.
Right, the governor was certainly trying to and supportive of loosening some regulations so that you could build some houses.
Right.
Well, that went to energy and environment, and they turned around and did
Nothing,
the opposite.
yeah.
They stiffened it up so that in some towns you'd hardly be able to build at all.
You know, you would think after Tropical Storm Irene that we would have gotten the message. They just let everything go. The roads are there. Everything that was built in response to Irene, and nothing got damaged, nothing got destroyed, and life went on, and it went on faster, bigger, better.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure after Irene that when I came back to the legislature, they'd be doing all these rule changes. Nope, just like you said. Nope. Just make it more strict. I love it. Come on to Vermont.
Yeah.
Pay more.
And I found out too that there was another bill, and I tried to amend it, and I found out that it's current practice, but they just wanted to, you know, put it into statute. It's a federal law already, and I guess the state is following, but if you take any state money for construction of a house or
Right.
any part of it, you know, like there's the program out there for first-time home buyers to
Right,
help pay for
right.
closing houses. If you get any of them, the house has to be what they call ADA adaptable. Yeah.
So wider door frames, but excellent. Nothing, just add price, add cost.
And it was,
I can't
you know, because I went and argued my amendment, and one of the members of the committee said, "Wow, Mark, you know, my husband was in a wheelchair for a while, and it costs us a lot of money to retrofit the house and all that, and we need to have it so that older Vermonters can stay here in Vermont." And I felt like saying, You know, there's a whole lot more that are older Vermonters
Well,
are not
exactly.
able to
How about
stay here
young
because
people
of.
with kids and people are, yeah, no, it doesn't stop. I mean, my husband and I are retired. We've got X-Bucks, nice living. But if we didn't have all this money, we could maybe go somewhere,
Right.
do something, enjoy the fruits of our labor, as they say. We have 2 minutes left, Mark.
Oh.
I want to, it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yes.
I want to thank you very much. So I asked you this before, and I love the answer. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate this session?
Well, I think I said a 2.
Yes, I think you did.
And again,
I think you were being generous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just, you know, as far as, you know, they like that. And I understand, you know, we have a difference of opinion as to the legislation that's put out there and presented and what I might like to see. And the intent is still there, but it just, you have to look past all the proposals and the costs and all that, and they think that it's.
That's what I'm telling you. I think we need one of those budget clocks, you know, the debt clock they've got. You put it under the speaker's podium and the pro tem's podium. And every time they say we're going to allocate $2 million, the clock rolls up. And just do it as an ongoing thing and let them know every time they try something, it's going to cost money.
Well, just like, you know, the $29 million for free school lunches.
Oh, please.
Well, now that's in the property tax now, right?
Yep.
So even people that used to get the free lunches because of their income are now paying in a way if they have property, because it's a property tax, right?
Yeah.
Or if they rent, and the property taxes are going up 18%.
Right.
You know darn well your rent's probably going to go
For sure.
up, so they're going to be paying. But anyway,
I did not approve that. There must be a way to not embarrass a child.
there is.
Seriously,
they don't have the tickets anymore.
Right, but just let the kid eat and worry about it later. But if you can afford to pay the meal, pay it.
Right. Well, they're always saying, you know, the rich should pay their fair share, right?
Yeah, but giving them free lunch, what does that makes no sense. I do love that. With somebody in my family lost their job, and they did it correctly. When she had lost her job, the kids had the free and reduced lunch. When she got the job back, she wrote to school and said, take them off, I'm paying. And that's what it's intended to do, to help you when things aren't going so well. And there you go. Mark, I thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you.
I hope you come back and fill us in after, what is it, they say May 10th? Is that the date?
That's what we're shooting for.
You think it's going to be?
I think they can. A lot of stuff might get kind of dropped off, but
yeah, I just heard today a bill I was following on the CTE. That's not going anywhere, but
yeah, you know, it's the budget, right? The education bill, the transportation, a couple others,
and then what else is it? Yeah, that's it. So, Mark Higley, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites.